Bantu-speaking people started to emerge around the Niger Delta some 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. It's when they started to emerge, these Bantu people. They spread into the whole of West Africa. Some went into North Africa, a few of them. Others, a few of them also went into the Horn of Africa, where they mixed with the Afro-Asiatic groups that had come there slightly earlier to produce what you call today the Ethiopians, the Eritreans, the Tigris, and a little bit down the Somalis. Some came down the Cameroon, the Congo, and went into East Africa. Others came down the Cameroon, the Congo, the Great Lakes, and went all the way down to Mozambique, South Africa, and later started coming back again upwards. The people who were there, who occupied these territories we are occupying today as Zambia, they were Sani people. These Bantus were quite aggressive human beings. They started killing these Sani people they found here. Some of them had to flee in the Congo forests. Some of them had to flee into the Kalahari deserts, the arid parts of South Africa, the arid parts of Botswana, and later became known as the Khoi. The earliest group of Bantus to come into this territory, occupy this territory, which we call Zambia today, because there was no country. They were just moving in their own country, resettling in different parts of their country called Africa. The earliest to settle in this territory called Africa, to Zambia today, came 500 BC. They came 500 years before Christ was born. They entered what is now Zambia around Mpulungu and Mbala. Some of them remained around Mpulungu and Mbala, and those who remained around Mpulungu and Mbala later became known as the Mambwe. Others moved a little bit down into what is now Luapula and settled there. They became known as the Lungu. Others moved a bit down to what is now Nakonde, Isoka, and settled there. Later they became known as the Namwanga. Then we had a group that moved a bit downwards and settled around what is now called Lundazi. They became known as the Tumbuka. The other group moved downwards all the way to Livingstone, Caprivi Strip in Namibia, Sesheke in Zambia, and eastern Angola, and settled there. They became known later as the Suvia. These are the earliest migrants into this territory called Zambia. Of course, later on, we had secondary migrations. We had people who had gone to South Africa. They started coming up again. One such group entered what is now called Zambia in 450 AD and went all the way to what is now Western Province, Mongo area. Some of them, when they got to the Mongo area there, they settled down. Another group moved from that group going eastward to what is now Kaoma and Keyema and settled down there. Those who remained in Mongo became known as the Loyana. Those who went and settled in Kaoma and Keyema became known as the Nkoya. Then we had a small migration between 500 and 550 AD. This was from southern Congo, just above what is now the northwestern province of Zambia, around the Kolwezi area in Congo. A small group of people moved downwards, Bantu people. These Bantu people moved downwards through what is now northwestern province, went all the way to Mulobezi in western province and settled there. They became known as the Totela and the Shanju. Then in 800 AD, we had a big migration, a very big migration from southern Congo again. Passing through northwestern province, this group, some of them settled around Namwala, or what we are calling Namwala today, and Itesteje, and they became known as the Ila. Some of this group moved and settled in the area between Mumbwa and Lusaka, and they became known as the Sala. Then we had the group that settled around Lusaka, Chongwe, Kafiwe. These became known as the Sori. And then another group tried to move northwards. They moved northwards up to Kapirimposhi and settled in this area between Lusaka and Kapirimposhi, and they became known as the Lenje. Part of this group went downwards into what we are calling the Gwembe Valley now, and this plateau, and also the northern part of Zimbabwe, and settled there. Later on, this group became known as the Tonga. Then we had part of this group that had gone all the way to Malawi and settled around Lake Malawi the northern parts of Mozambique, and the eastern part of what is now Zambia. This group became known as the Chewa. Part of this group, a small group, moved into what is now Nkata Bay on Lake Malawi and settled there. Later on, this group became known as the Tonga of Malawi. And that's a group from which Dr. Kaunda's family originated from. This was followed by a small migration in 1000 AD. Again, from southern Congo, a small group moved, settled around Solwezi. Part of that group went and occupied parts of Mumbwa, and part of it went and occupied parts of Kasempa. And later on, this group became known as the Kaonde. Then we had another big migration, very big migration, between 1600 and 1700. This was from the Katanga part of Congo, just above the copper belt of Zambia there. A big group moved downwards. When they got into the copper belt, some of the members of that group remained there and settled there. Later on, they became known as the Lamba people. Part of that group started moving downwards to Mukushi. When they got to Mukushi, a few of them remained and settled there, and later on, they became known as the Swaka. Then they moved eastward to what is now Serenge. When they got to Serenge, a small group remained there and settled there and became known later as the Lala people. Then we had a group of 5 which moved upwards into what is now Luapula province. These gave us the Ushi, the Kunda, the Chishinga, the Bwile, and the Ambo. These occupied the southern part of Luapula. Then we had the group that moved to what is now Mpika district of Zambia and settled there. This group became later known as the Visa. Then we had the group that had moved downwards all the way to Katete, Petauke, Nyimba, and settled in that area. That group became known as the Nsenga. One group of Bantu people from Katanga, moving from the Congo.
Would you say with all this migration and different groups being formed, that Zambia is still one?
We are supposed to be one. We are one people. We are one people. Later on, this migration also had a secondary element in it. A group that had left the Congo March area and moved into what is now Eastern Angola and created a huge kingdom there called the Mbunda Kingdom. Some of its members started moving into what is now Western Province of Zambia. Led by 2 Mbunda princes, Kandala and Chiengere, this group moved into what is now Mongu and the Mulunga. The Kandala group settled around Mavumbu and had its headquarters at Yuka. That's the Mwene Kandala Mbunda chiefdom. Then the other one went to Nangoko and settled there in the Mulunga district and became the Mbundas of Mwene Chiengere. Others moved backward again to Kalabo and settled there at Liumba, and they became the Mbunda chiefdom of Mwene Mundu. Others moved eastward again into the southern part of Northwestern Province and settled there around Kabompo and became the Mbundas of Northwestern Province there in Kabompo and Skufere. Then we had another migration in 1700 from Eastern Congo into what is now the Luapula province of Zambia. That migration gave us the Lunda people of Mwatakazembe, or sometimes called the Northeastern Lunda. Then we had another migration which was big between 1700 and 1800 around Kabompo and became the Mbundas of Northwestern Province there in Kabompo and Skufere. Then we had another migration in 1700 from Eastern Congo into what is now the Luapula province of Zambia. That migration gave us the Lunda people of Mwatakazembe, or sometimes called the Northeastern Lunda. Then we had another migration which was big between 1700 and 1800. This migration took people into what is now, or took Congolese into what is now northern and Muchinga provinces of Zambia, and it gave us what we call the Bemba people. Then we had a migration in 1800, again from the western part of southern Congo into the western part of northwestern province of Zambia. This migration gave us the Lunda people, who settled around Mwinilunga. It gave us the Lunda people who settled around Chavuma and Zambezi. Part of these Lundas went into Western Province and mixed with the Ruyanas who had come there 450 AD. And actually, these Lundas who went to Western Province became the rulers of the Ruyanas. The first Litunga of the Ruyanas was a Lunda woman called Mbuyamwambo. She ruled for some time. After that, the Ruyanas decided, no, we can't be ruled by a woman. They forced her to abdicate to Asanimbo, who became the first male Litunga. So what you call the Lozi royal family today, they are Lundas. They are Lundas. Then we had the Luvales and the Chokwes and the Luchazes. The Luvales occupying parts of Chavuma and parts of Zambezi. The Luchazes, the Chokwes, and the Luchazes, the Luchazes and the Chokwes settled around Kabompo. This phenomena, you may ask, how was it possible for a group that came in 1800 to start ruling the Ruyanas who came in 450? The explanation is simple. Those who left the Congo March area left before the governance structures in the Congo had emerged. So there was no governance structures when they left. So they left without knowledge of governing. Those who came later with the governance knowledge became the chiefs. You see it also among the Tongas. The Tongas had come to this area around 800 AD, long before the governance structures in the Congo in the Luba-Lunda kingdom had been established and crystallized. So they came without governance knowledge. And there was no new group that came from the Congo to join them. So for a long time they stayed without governance structures. They had no chiefs. Most of the Tonga chiefs we know today are a creation of the British colonial authorities to effect indirect rule. They would simply look at one who has more cattle, who has a big harvest, has more wives, you are the chief. The British were creating chiefs for us up to 1935 1935 in the Mazabuka area. 1935, they were still creating chiefs for us. Then we had another migration in 1830. This was also a secondary migration from the south, from the kingdom of Lesotho. These Sothos, who became known as the Kololos, led by Sevitwan, crossed into what is now Zambia around Livingstone in 1830. In the Livingstone-Kalomo area, they mixed with the Subias who had remained there, who had come there 500 BC. They mixed with the Tongas who had come there 800 AD to give us what we call the Toka layers today. And the part of these Kololos moved westwards to Western Province, where they mixed with the Ruyanas who had also mixed a little bit with the Lundas to produce what you call the Lozi people today. The Lozis you call Lozis today are a mixture of Ruyanas, Lundas, and Sothos. Then we had the last major migration into this territory called Zambia today in 1835. This was also a secondary migration from the south. These were soldiers from Shaka Zulu's army who had committed some military offenses and they were about to be court-martialed. They decided to flee, leaving behind their wives, leaving behind their children, only men. They were being pursued by Shaka Zulu's army as they were fleeing. They crossed into what is now Zambia around Luangwa or Feira. Actually, the day they were crossing the Zambezi, there was an eclipse of the sun. So these Zulu soldiers thought it was their gods protecting them from their enemies that they were crossing, when it was simply a coincidence. They were helped to cross the Zambezi by the Chikundas, who had settled there and had created some canoes there. So after these Zulu soldiers were helped to cross, they turned on the Chikundas, massacred them and destroyed their canoes. They were worried that if they left the Chikundas with their canoes, they will help Shaka Zulu's army that was pursuing them to cross. They headed all the way to southern Tanzania. Some of them settled in southern Tanzania. Some of them settled in western Malawi. Some of them settled in what is now eastern Zambia. Those who settled in eastern Zambia became known as the Ngonis. So these Ngonis you are calling Ngonis today, they are Zulus from the Zulu kingdom of Shaka. Since they had come without women, they started marrying Senga women they found there, Chewa women they found there, Tumbuka women they found there. The children they were producing within Senga women started to speak more and more of Chinsenga. The children they were producing with the Chewa women started to speak more and more of Chichewa. Those with the Tumbuka women started to speak more and more of Chitumbuka. Eventually the Zulu or Ngoni language, these Ngonis or Zulu soldiers that come with, died. Today you have Mpezeni, the paramount chief of the Ngoni people, he speaks Chinsenga. These are the major migrations into this territory. What does this tell us? It tells us we are all one people, one Bantu group of people coming from the Niger Delta through the Congo. Even those who had to come back later from South Africa, they also come from the Niger Delta through the Congo. We are all one group of Bantu.